we are now going to do something we've never done before. For all the discussion about the Mueller probe, it's rare to hear firsthand what's happening inside the Mueller probe because his office doesn't leak. Accounts from the lawyers and witnesses involved are rare or are offered on background in anonymous bits and pieces to reporters. But tonight, 4 key witnesses in the Russia probe are here in one place for one live interview for the first time together. And each person at this table that you see is linked to President Trump and is directly involved in Bob Mueller's Russia probe. Each have given some sort of testimony to the feds. One of these 4 men was explicitly warned that Mueller could indict him. Jerome Corsi is the only person in this probe to publicly release Mueller's written warning that he could be indicted on the felony of lying to investigators. One of these 4 men faced the risk of imprisonment for another reason. Former Trump aide Sam Nunberg openly declaring that he would defy a Mueller subpoena to face the grand jury. And then Nunberg did, of course, comply. One of these 4 men worked on behalf of Russian interests for years and is open about that. Former Trump aide Michael Caputo lobbied for a foreign power on behalf of a Russian energy conglomerate during the campaign. He publicly declared the WikiLeaks hack was a provocation from the Russians, breaking with the denials of Trump and most of his other aides on the record. And the last of these 4 men is a former Trump advisor, Carter Page, who not only talked about informally advising the Kremlin, but interacted with people identified by the U.S. as Russian spies in 2013 and traveled to Russia during the Trump campaign in 2016. And the FBI sought and gained approval to put Page under surveillance in October 2016, providing potential evidence to what is now the Mueller probe, and also teeing up the now famous debates over the so-called Nunes memo, interference in the Russia probe, and the FBI's independence. With me now for the first time together, let's get into it. Witnesses Jerome Corsi, Sam Nunberg, Michael Caputo, and Carter Page. We're going to explore your role in the probe, but I want to begin with Michael Cohen, and thanks to each of you for being here. Appreciate it.
Sure.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Michael Caputo, let me start with you. Do you think Michael Cohen does fear the president is threatening him, and should he testify?
I don't think he fears the president as much as he fears Mueller. I think he's doing whatever Mueller tells him to do. I think this drama unfolds the way that Mueller wants it to. And Michael Cohen, I think, will do and say whatever it takes to cut his sentence down. I think Michael Cohen is an inveterate liar. And it's been proven so. He's been found guilty of lying. I think he'll continue to lie and say whatever he needs to cut his sentence down as far as possible.
Do you think Cohen should testify, Sam?
I think what's interesting, Ari, is that the way a lot of this is being covered is that this is a bad day for Democrats or for the chairman of the Oversight Committee. Republicans are looking forward to him testifying because while you may have questions and Cohen may say certain things that are problematic for the president, they're going to be people on the other side just attacking him and attacking his credibility and going over every single thing that he did to betray what they view as betraying the president.
Do you think, as the Democratic chairs are alleging, that when Donald Trump attacks Michael Cohen's family, that is so-called, quote, mob tactics?
Well, you know, quite frankly, Ari, I haven't given a lot of thought to Michael Cohen. I'm much more concerned about myself.
I understand that. What about you, Carter?
Well, the key word in that statement today was threat. And actually, when I met with a House Intel committee, I told them about many death threats that stemmed directly from the March 2017 meeting between the House Intel, particularly Congressman Schiff, and his discussions with Comey, where they were talking about the dodgy dossier. And so I felt that firsthand. So, you know, to me, threat is.
And when you were in the FBI interview, were you ever asked about Michael Cohen?
I can't recall specifics, but I definitely told them about the death threats in those interviews.
I was asked about Michael Cohen, a couple of different questions. I think everybody is, right?
Extensively and extensively in the grand jury.
I don't recall anything about Michael Cohen.
So that, and you're the one who's not a former Trump aide, so it'd be less
That's
likely.
right. They may have asked me how I knew Michael Cohen, what relationship I had with him, but it always had been very casual, and I'd known Michael Cohen for years as part of the Trump organization.
Yeah.
But never really any detail or deep depth with Michael Cohen.
So before we move on, yes or no, do you think, in your opinion, that he should step up and speak to Congress before he goes to jail?
I really don't have any opinion on it.
I think he should.
I really couldn't care less. I'd like him to go to jail as soon as possible and stay there a long time.
The more openness, the better.
I want to start now, as we get into the probe with you all, on some yes or no questions. Real quick, so we understand who we're talking to. Did you speak to the FBI or Mueller's prosecutors?
Yes.
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 As leaked to the Washington Post and New York Times, yes, I can confirm their statements.
Have you been inside Mueller's grand jury?
They said that, and I will not deny that. Yes.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Do you think this probe is a witch hunt?
Yes.
Yes and no.
Classic Nunberg, yes and no.
Yes, I do.
Yes, you do.
The Comey steps and the FBI steps against me was a witch hunt, as I wrote to him in September 2016.
Do you think any of the indictments or guilty outcomes thus far are legitimate? You have people like you're criticizing Cohen, who comes out of SDNY, or Manafort and Gates, or Flynn. Any legitimate or all illegitimate?
Well, I don't know anything about Manafort's taxes, so I can't comment on that. So I don't know.
I think they're legitimate.
I think they're legitimate, but I do believe that Michael Cohen pled guilty to something that is not a crime.
I don't know, and I only base things on facts, and so let's wait and see. I'm just waiting for the facts of what they did illegally against myself. So,
Do you expect, and you're on this list, and I don't say that lightly, do you expect more indictments coming out of this probe?
More indictments? I don't know. Again, I don't know.
I would say probably, but I would have no direct knowledge.
I don't think so.
You think we're at the end?
I think we're at the end.
based on Chairman Graham's discussions with the Attorney General nominee, it sounds like they're starting some new investigations and there potentially could be some indictments, so we shall see.
Some of you will talk about this, some of you won't, but so we understand, because you have an experience most people don't. What was it like when the FBI brought you in? What was the tone? What was the professionalism? Starting with you, Dr. Corsi.
Well, I wrote a book, Silent No More, and I think that the entire experience was abusive. I went in to cooperate. I brought in, proffered all my computers, my cell phones, my email accounts, and I expected this to be a cooperative process. The gotcha games and the memory games started from day one.
And you felt they were very adversarial about what you said.
And abusive, and abusive.
Sam?
I thought that the questioning in my voluntary for the first 90 minutes was aggressive, but I understood why they did it. What I did not feel was fair was giving me such a small window to comply with the document production.
You felt that was hardball. That's what made you feel pressed.
Correct.
I've compared it to a proctology appointment, and mine went shorter than I thought it would. Thank goodness.
You know, March 2017, when I had those discussions with the FBI, I was extremely open. What was interesting about those conversations, they pushed back and they would actually say to me, well, you know, our bosses are actually asking us about these allegations.
That's why we have to look into it.
Yeah, I think they actually, you know, boots on the ground, the actual FBI agents, they saw something a little bit shady about this dodgy dossier.
You think,
Yep.
and a lot of people don't believe you when you talk, Carter, because of the way you've denied and then come back around on Russia. But you're saying it's your genuine belief that the FBI agents questioning you disagreed with the direction of the investigation they were getting from their superiors?
That was my gut sense. Again, I don't like to speculate on things when I don't know for sure, but yeah.
And you agree with that, Michael?
I believe rank and file FBI, yes, but the FBI agents that were in the room with me were kind of just the facts, ma'am. It looked like an episode of Dragnet. You know, they were just taking notes and doing their job.
I think that's a tactic they use to build a rapport.
Mm-hmm.
They build a rapport, the good cop.
Right,
I mean,
the
if you've
good
seen
cop.
one of these movies, you know about good cop, bad cop.
That's what I think they
We're
do.
living in a movie.
Well, I mean, my whole investigation, blew up because I don't have a contact with Julian Assange. And I think the last 20 hours, as I detail in this Silent No More, were very abusive. And I think we're out of order.
Who did they ask most about?
Well, they asked mostly about Roger Stone.
You?
Roger and Michael.
Roger Stone.
Dodgy dossier allegations, all that information that came out.
But who is that?
There's those 35 pages, a lot of those specific details.
But the question is, were they asking you about foreign contacts, oligarchs? Who did they ask you about?
Everything sort of revolved around those 35 pages in the Steele memorandums, which were totally false as it relates to me.
Well, those relate to you going to Russia and you allegedly holding meetings.
That was not, well, all of those allegations specifically were with two people I've never met in my entire life. Yeah.
So their focus, though, with you was contacts with foreigners.
Yes.
Yes. And with you two, it was contacts with the president's lawyer, who's now going to jail, former lawyer, and Mr. Stone.
Right. Well, also for me, also foreign contacts.
Yeah.
I guess, If you set me up against everybody in Trump Tower during the campaign, I probably have more contacts with Russians than all of them combined. My Ukrainian mother-in-law is with us in Buffalo, New York right now. We speak Russian in our house. I lived in Russia for 7 years. I worked for the Kremlin. I expected a few questions about Russians.
How do you explain that with that background and that linkage, you spent less time in there? You were the one during the campaign saying what later was proven by investigators that WikiLeaks linked back to Russia, and all these other people are in the soup deeper.
I don't know how to explain that, except for perhaps I was more of a marginal aide. Sam was in early and was very important in the run-up to the formal campaign. I think you were in the jackpot because they were illegally wiretapping and FISAing you.
Well, no, this is the time. We've seen Dr. Corsi there spending a lot of time. Nunberg 11, Michael, according to what we have, 3. Carter Page, according to public accounts, 10. So you come through very good, Michael. If this is the end of the road for you,
I think so. But at the same time, I think they told me when we went in there not to make dinner plans. We went in at noon. We were out at 3:30. So I think they were disappointed in the answers that I gave, and also disappointed that I told them that an FBI informant approached me and I sent him to Roger Stone, an FBI informant that still is out there on an FBI visa, informant visa, dining out in Miami Beach tonight. I
want to get into that, but while we're on Stone. You now publicly are saying you won't stand for the way Roger Stone is treating you. We can put up the tweet. But basically, you allege that Roger Stone and InfoWars are being untruthful about you. Why?
And defamatory.
Defamatory, big
Both.
charge.
I mean, they're both, on this whole idea that I had hush money. This started really with Washington Post, I guess, last Friday, circulating, saying, coming from the Mueller prosecutors, that I was being paid hush money by Dr. Jones, the father of Alex Jones. The termination letter is available. I published it this morning. It was severance pay. It was not hush money. They're also alleging, the Washington Post was saying that I was being paid by the NRA, which is paid by Russia, and that contributed to InfoWars. Well, my paychecks had nothing to do with Russia. I've had no contacts with Russia.
But you're here saying Roger Stone should cut it out, and you're saying he's defaming you.
He's not saying
yes.
any of that.
I'm saying
That's not Roger saying any of that.
Well, I'm saying that Roger in his broadcast has been defamatory, and I want it stopped.
Michael?
I think Roger says the same thing about you. I mean, I've known Roger 30 years, Dr. Corsi, and I'm not buying this George Washington Act of yours on this. A lot of the things you say about Roger, I think, are steering him towards a perjury charge. I also think that it's really hurting his reputation, and I really believe that the things you said about WikiLeaks don't add up. The things you say about Rogers asking you for a memo to back up a tweet, none of this adds up. And I think Roger's got all the proof,
Mike,
emails, texts, metadata to prove it, and eventually it'll be proven.
Matt, that's fine. The fact of the matter is, the reason us 3 are essentially in there is because of Stone.
I get that. I get that, but I don't.
Roger.
Let Sam finish.
Number 2, Roger's not Donald Trump. Okay, he's not going to get away with witness tampering. He should shut up. He should shut up.
How is he
when he goes around and lies and says that I was the only person he told as a joke that he met with Julian Assange, give me a break. Give me a break. That was wrong. With that said, my testimony, and this is the irony of it, whatever Roger wants to attack me, my testimony contradicts Jerome Corsi's testimony. I defend my testimony, what I recall from Roger's infamous or famous tweet with Podesta's, was that that it lines up with Podesta's work in Ukraine. It had nothing to do with emails.
That's a cover story or potentially true defense, depending on your view, of why Roger Stone seemed to know about things that proved to be true. That's one defense. You offered another, but you're saying your view is that Dr. Corsi here at the table is the informational aggressor and is actually setting up Roger?
I'm sorry, Dr. Corsi, that's what I believe, and I believe you're being pushed into it by Mueller. And I don't agree with what you're saying about Roger. I believe that Roger's got the evidence to prove that what you're saying is false. But what you just said about, the pay from InfoWars and all that, that's all stuff coming out of Mueller, not out of Roger. And I think you're putting your old friend in danger.
Well, he put us all in danger, by the way, Mike. To tell you the truth.
Dr. Corsi responds.
Well, I think Roger's been defamatory. I think the things that have been said in the broadcast, I'm very much offended by, and I'm not going to argue with Roger word for word or issue by issue. Roger's entitled to his own perception. what he perceived. And I can tell you what I perceived. I can't tell you what Roger was
But
thinking.
something has
How do
happened.
we get to the bottom of that, though? I mean, I'm not asking you, Dr. Corsi. How do we get to the bottom of that, of tit for tat, if Roger isn't indicted? How do we get to the bottom of what Jerry's saying versus what Roger's saying? How do we get to the bottom of that?
Well, I think that's part of what we're doing. Part of what we're doing tonight. You have changed your tune a little bit because the last time we were here, you didn't say Stone was defaming you. You just wanted to stay out of it. I want to play that and then get your response. This
sure.
was
Go
you
ahead.
last time. Take a look.
I'm not going to get involved in a dispute or debate with Roger Stone. If he wants to say those things, so be it. It's up to him to do it, and if he wants to disparage me, so be it. I'm not going to respond, and I don't intend to engage in that kind of discussion with Roger.
And now you are in that discussion. I just showed it. You're accusing him of defaming you.
Yes, and it's changed because Roger's intensified his attacks. Since I was here last time, and since I'm here tonight, Roger's upped his intensity of attacks on me, and so is Alex Jones. And I'm not going to put up with it.
We're not going to stay on this forever, but when you talk about Alex Jones this way, you're saying he's also defaming you, right?
Yes, he is too.
But you worked for InfoWars.
Yes, I did.
You were, and we can put it on the screen, Washington Bureau Chief for InfoWars.
That was my title, and there's a lot that never got funded that I had set up by Alex Jones. Never funded it.
Well, it's more than a title, sir. This is you touting
right.
press credentials. You
And-
also wrote, and we'll put it up, all sorts of articles, including about these issues in the FBI and Assange, and he's, of course, attacked you. We've got that as well. The bottom line here being you're beefing with it's like you're beefing with your own record label.
Well, I'll tell you
understand?
what.
You are
Ari,
InfoWars. You're their bureau chief.
Yes, okay.
You tell us it's all going to be fine because you're not going to get into it with him. Now you're back here and it's all his fault.
Well,
and before we move on, I want to give you the benefit of that and Caputo and then some other questions.
Well, Ari, look, I've just expanded my lawsuit to include Washington Post and Jeff Bezos. Now, next week, I'll be talking with my lawyers to see if I'm going to file a suit against WikiLeaks and Roger Stone.
But I'm not, respectfully, I'm not asking you about your ability to file litigation against a range of
Right.
people. I'm asking you, sir,
Right.
why you go from saying, I'm InfoWars, I'm literally their bureau chief, I won't get into it with Roger, and now suddenly InfoWars and Roger are the enemy because these are the things that are at issue
Ari.
in the Mueller probe, which you're being accused by him of potentially
Ari, I'm trying to
felonious
answer your
lying. Go
question.
ahead, sir.
The question is, they've upped their attacks on me. They've gotten much more vicious, and I'm not. When I was here last time, I was willing to tolerate a lot of what Roger was saying, and Roger's been all over the board. I've not wanted to get into a debate with him. I still don't. But if they continue what I consider to be defamation, we're going to take action.
Mr. Caputo.
I believe that this is what Mueller does. He drives a wedge between old friends. He destroys relationships in the hopes that that they'll turn against each other and eventually turn evidence against the President of the United States. I know I would never do that. I know Roger would never do that. I believe none of us would do that. And I got to tell you, I think we got to change the way the special counsel operates in the future.
Well, on that point, that goes to Sam. I'm going to let you in, but I want to play for you, Sam, you talking initially when you were talking about defying Mueller, about Roger Stone as your mentor. You both have also changed your tune. Mr. Caputo is suggesting that's law enforcement's problem. A lot of other people think it means somebody is lying. And if they're lying in the investigation, that's a felony. Here you were initially saying Roger is a friend and you would defend him. Take a look.
I'm not going to answer something so wide as this. This is so ridiculous. I'm not going to go into a grand jury for them to set up a case against Roger, whatever case it is, which could be ridiculous.
You keep saying you don't think there'll be a consequence. What if the consequence for that is going to jail, Sam?
They're not going to send me to jail. You know what, Mr. Mueller, if he wants to send me to jail, he can send me to jail, and then I'll laugh. Roger's my mentor. I email Ari with Roger 15 times a day. Okay? They're trying to set up a perjury case against Roger Stone, and I'm not going to have it. Roger's my mentor. Roger is like family to me.
But you did go in there, and is he still like family to you?
After I went in, he sets up a story that I'm the only one that he told that he had met with Assange. It's like similar to the fictional employee he had in 1996, excuse me.
You're saying he was lying about you and trying to pin something with you as his defense.
And pin something. And basically, look, in the background, Roger, like in the Trump circle, fine. If you hear that he's bad-mouthing you, I mean, it's par for the course within that environment. to do what he did publicly after the strain that he put me through. I didn't ask him to email me and tell me that he had met with Julian Assange.
You don't think he was
Well,
joking?
we can put up, and I don't do it, again, this is part of my job. I don't do it
Yeah.
to make it harder for you, but this is what he's saying about you.
Well, and I mean, so it shows you Roger's character in that way, too. Listen, he emailed me. I didn't ask him to tell me about his fairy tales about Julian Assange. I didn't ask him. I had warned him not to do
Do you
that.
think he helped the campaign collude?
Do I think he helped the camp? I think Roger wishes he colluded. I think Roger conspired against himself.
You think you think Roger Stone is a wannabe colluder?
I think that they were trying to ingratiate themselves and make themselves on the outskirts.
This is what I'm going to do. I promised I would keep it moving. I'm going to take what is a very short 30-second break. Carter Page has been less involved. We're going to get you more involved. You're the only person here that the FBI has said deals with Russian spies. That doesn't apply to any of the other three. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.